Blake Lively, Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We continue with the examination of Blake Lively to find out what she is. We're going to now look at family. Blake Lively's immediate family consists of the following individuals. Her father, Ernie Lively, who died in 2021. Her mother, Elaine Lively. Her half-siblings, Laurie, Robin and Jason. They are from the relationship between her mother Elaine and Ronnie Lively, and also her brother Eric. The familial relationship is a particularly important aspect of a person's character when determining what they are, because these individuals have, for the most part, grown up around the subject and have been the parent of the subject all of their life. And the way that they regard the subject and the way that the subject regards them provides us with insight with regard to how they interact and what the subject might be. What does the subject say about those family members? What do the family members say about the subject? Is it a case of mutual praise, or have there been fallouts or estrangements? Alternatively, is there a silence regarding their familial relations, and if so, what might we glean from that? Let us begin with the relationship between Blake Lively and her mother, Elaine. Elaine Lively, born Elaine McAlpin, has been described as the matriarch of the Lively family. This suggests that she has the more dominant personality and role in the family compared to that of her late husband. She was a talent manager in Hollywood and has been described as instrumental in guiding her children towards successful careers in acting, which again supports that she's probably the individual that is more forthright compared to the father. She's been married before. Her first husband was Ronnie Lively. They were married for 10 years. They dated for 1 year after getting together in 1963 and married in 1964. Marriage after such a short period of time can often be indicative of a person exhibiting a sense of entitlement. But one also has to put it into the cultural context that in the 60s, people often did get married quite soon after meeting one another. And therefore, one would not read too much into this with regard to what this might tell us about Ronnie Lively or Elaine Lively in particular. 10 years later, they divorced in 1975. It was Elaine Lively who instituted divorce proceedings, but there's no information as to why this occurred. The nature of their relationship and why they're divorced is not public information and doesn't assist in shedding any light on the character of Elaine Lively. After Elaine and her first husband split, she got remarried to actor Ernie Brown in 1979. This resulted in something quite interesting. First of all, Ernie adopted all 3 of Elaine's children. For his part, that shows that he, at least, appeared to be exhibiting emotional empathy towards the children who were not his by adopting them. It's far from a rare event, but for somebody to take on somebody else's children and adopt them often supports the fact that they exhibit emotional empathy towards them. Naturally, it turns on how much involvement they have with the children, etc., but the fact is that he went and adopted them, going a step further than one might ordinarily do so. A very interesting element of this is that Brown then changed his name to adopt Lively. What's interesting about that is that he's not adopting Elaine's maiden name, he's adopting her married name from a relationship with another man. That strikes me as somewhat strange, and one wonders if this was at the assistance of Elaine Lively that this be the case. For a man to consent to this suggests perhaps that, again, the more dominant and forceful personality in the relationship was coming from Elaine Lively. Ordinarily, she would have taken Brown's name, but to, one, reject that, bearing in mind the time period, of it being the 70s, and secondly, to insist that he adopt her former married name. She hadn't reverted back to being known as McAlpin. Strikes as a somewhat entitled approach and might give us a degree of insight into what Elaine Lively's personality could well be. It's certainly unusual, and it's something that I take note from. The pair then had 2 children of their own, Eric in 1981 and Blake in 1987. They haven't publicly mentioned how or when they met, and they were together until he died in 2021. There is nothing to be found in relation to how their relationship was, and it would appear on the face of it that it was not one that was marked by problems. Interestingly, Elaine Lively has something of a reputation of being rather difficult to work with behind the scenes when she was a talent manager. Whilst projecting an image of being a pleasant person, she had gained this reputation of being a rather draining and exhausting individual. This is starting to paint something of a picture that she might be a rather domineering individual who requires things to be her way and can be difficult if she doesn't get it. There's not a lot of public information about spats or fallings out, but simply the inference and statement that she had a reputation for being difficult to work with. Of course, being a talent manager would mean that you were probably dealing with some rather volatile individuals, possibly who were narcissists, and therefore it might not be a surprise that she would have to be difficult to work with in order to rein them in. Lively has been pictured regularly with her mother and appears to have a close relationship with her. There's been no reported fallout between the two. They often praise one another. For instance, Lively has joked about inheriting her traits from her mother, stating that she got that with regard to the fact that her mother was an actress and talent manager. She also said about her mother that I would like to replace the term hoarder in favour of maximalist. It makes me feel better. Wonder where I get it from, she captioned a December 2023 Instagram selfie with her mother sporting Tiffany & Co. jewellery. She stated, Mum, come take a pic for Tiffany with me. Which necklace do you want to wear? Mum, all of them. Lively, no, pick your favourite. Mum, all of them. Turn on the makeup light. The woman wins every time. There's a suggestion there, even though it's stated jokingly, again of her mother being somebody that dictates, and to suggest that she is something of a hoarder might point to her mother having something of an avaricious appetite. Again, it's more material around the edges that starts to form a view as to Elaine Lively potentially having strong narcissistic traits rather than any key evidence. But in terms of the relationship between Lively and her mother, there's no evidence, at least publicly, of complications in that regard. More usually, where there is a narcissist in one position or the other, it's more likely to be the case that there is evidence of fallout and it being tempestuous. Possibly, however, it might just be the case that any fallings out have been kept away from the public eye. But the main takeaway from Elaine Lively is that there is a suggestion of her being a domineering character, one that was difficult to work with and has been the more influential with regard to her children, but no evidence of falling out between her and Blake Lively. With regard to her father, Ernie, he was an actor, and he got his acting start in the 70s, and he'd appeared in notable projects such as Turner and Hooch, Quantum Leap, Passenger 57, Murder, She Wrote, and The West Wing. He, of course, also shared the screen with Blake Lively, playing her on-screen father in 2005, The Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants, and its 2008 sequel. Ernie died at age 74 of cardiac complications in June 2021. His family were by his side. Her drink company, Betty Buzz, is apparently a nod to him, whose mother and sister were named Betty. Lively said, "Ernie gave up his last name when he married my mum, and any success he or I have experienced has been in a name that isn't his. So when I was working hard to build this company, I wanted any success to be in a name that was meaningful to him. Betty was his mum and his sister's name, and also Ernie would not be the best name for a mixer." The fact that she thought of the names of Betty in relation to her father seems to be a caring gesture on the part of Lively. When Lively's father passed away, she simply shared a photograph of herself sat next to him and hugging her dad, accompanied by a heart emoji. But note once again Blake Lively's use of social media in respect of familial interactions. It would appear that Ernie Lively was a well-liked individual. For instance, Ashley Tisdale chimed in relation to the impact that he'd had on her life and the lives of everyone he interacted with. She stated, "Ernie Lively, this man was so special to me and many others. He played a huge role in my career, coaching me and supporting me through the difficulties of this business. The world lost an amazing father, grandfather, actor and acting coach." Praise for him. There is no evidence of a difficult relationship between Lively and her deceased father. No evidence of falling out or estrangement, which points to what was a good relationship between the two of them. Thus, so far, we don't have evidence of a difficult childhood, other than the suggestion that it might have been one which was controlled in the sense of this is what you need to do, and driving her towards acting. As I've mentioned in episode 1, Lively found herself in a situation where she basically grew up on sets, and it would appear that it was almost predetermined for her to get into acting. It's also the case that she found herself being given a leg up by both her father and her brother, which again might point to, rather than finding herself in an abusive environment when she was a child, it was one where rather it was a gilded environment, where she was effectively in a privileged situation, unable to make choices because the privilege meant that those decisions were made for her. It is a possibility that that has had an impact upon her and something that we need to keep in mind. But there's certainly no evidence of fractious relationships between her and her mother or her father. We now turn to the relationship with her siblings. A noteworthy element is the age differences between Blake Lively and her siblings. She has 3 half-siblings. Laurie, born in 1966, is 21 years older. Jason, born in 1968, is 19 years older. Robin, born in 1972, is 15 years older. One thing to bear in mind in respect of that is that, given their ages, it's far less likely that they actually spent any time growing up with Blake Lively. This means that they may not have witnessed certain behaviours. It also means that they potentially could have a more distant relationship with their half-sibling, to the extent that it might be argued that they don't really know one another that well. This could mean that there is less scope for fallings out because there's such a difference between them, so that they were never close to begin with. So that's something else to bear in mind given these age differences. Eric, who is a full brother, was born in 1981, and the age difference is a smaller 6 years there. But even then, that's not particularly close in the context of many relationships between children where they may have an older brother or sister or younger by 1 or 2 years. Let's now consider the situation in relation to Laurie Lively. Born in 1966, Laurie Lively is the eldest of Elaine and Ronnie Lively's 3 children. She's appeared in a number of TV shows and movies over the years, including Working Girl, The Bold and the Beautiful, Melrose Place, ER, 2.5 Men, and The Mentalist. She has supported her sister, Blake on the red carpet and appeared at the New York City premiere of It Ends With Us, the movie which has generated so much controversy, in August 2024. She posted a number of Instagram pictures from the event and captioned, "The only thing I loved more than celebrating this magical night with my sister and family was seeing her in this film. If you thought you loved her before, it won't compare to how you'll feel after experiencing the pain and joy that she brings to this role. It embodies all that she is in the most beautiful way." This is clearly praise that is coming from the elder sister and suggests a supportive position in relation to Blake Lively from a sister that is half-sister that is some 21 years older than her. It's also demonstrative of support now, not just in terms of supporting her career, but also when this statement was made was when the friction was occurring between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and she has clearly come out supporting her sister. Now, this might be because she simply feels obligated to do so because this is her half-sister, or it may well be that she has witnessed what has gone on and determines that her sister is in the right. But either way, the fact is, there's no evidence that demonstrates a difficult relationship with Lori Lively. On the contrary, it would appear that it is a supportive one. They may not be close, given the fact that there's 21 years difference between them, and that would be understandable. She was an adult when Blake Lively was born, and may well have not even been living at the family home any longer. But notwithstanding that fact, she still demonstrates support for Blake Lively. In respect of Jason Lively, he was born in 1968. He's appeared in a number of shows and films throughout the 80s and 90s, including The Dukes of Hazzard, 21 Jump Street and Class of Fear. He took a brief break from acting after appearing in the 1993 video game Return to Zork. He's appeared in Hickok and The Possessed. He's been married to his wife Elaine Lively since 2005, and they have 3 children. There isn't any evidence in relation to the relationship between him and Blake Lively. There's nothing that's particularly positive that has been stated. Neither, however, has there been anything negative that has been stated. Again, he is 19 years older than his sister, and this lack of commentary is probably a result of the fact that they're not particularly close. This lack of closeness isn't down to the way that either of them behaved, but quite simply the fact that he was an adult when she was born. And again, it may well have been the case that he wasn't necessarily at home any longer when she came into the world, and therefore has had a relatively limited involvement with her. There is not particularly any evidence that assists us either way in relation to the relationship between Jason Lively and Blake Lively. The next sister is Robin Lively. She was born in 1972 and is the youngest of Elaine and Ronnie Lively's children. She had a number of small TV gigs, and then she had a breakout role as Louise Miller in the 1989 film Teen Witch. She has actually built a lengthy Hollywood career over the years with roles in The Karate Kid Part 3, Twin Peaks, Doogie Howser, MD, Chicago Hope, Savannah, Letters to God, 911 Lone Star, and Landman. She married Bart Johnson in 1999, and they have 2 sons and 1 daughter. She and her husband shared messages of support for Blake Lively after she sued Baldoni in December 2024. She wrote, "Finally, justice for my sister at Blake Lively," on Instagram, and she shared screenshots of the New York Times article about the lawsuit, demonstrating a supportive stance with regard to Blake Lively. It's also the case that her brother-in-law defended Lively in the comments section of the New York Times Instagram post about the drama. He wrote, "Her complaints were filed during the filming, on record, long before the public conflict. The cast unfollowed him for a reason. Read this article before spitting ignorance. His PR team was stellar," he wrote. "Gross and disgusting but highly effective. Read the article, their text message exchanges, and his PR campaign strategy to bury her by any means necessary. No one is without fault, but the public got played." Might it be the case that Johnson has been played by Blake Lively, or is this again an accurate and honest measure of support for someone that is clearly within a tight-knit family? Whilst Blake and Robin are 15 years apart, they are regularly described as very close. There's a significant age gap which feels almost non-existent now because she's a mum. Robin Lively explained on one occasion. She explained, "We have so many similarities. Our relationship is on a deeper level. We used to help each other with our projects and lines, things like that. Now we're doing the mum thing together." Robin's husband has also commented on his wife's closeness with her sister. "I'll say from my perspective, they're like the same person," he said. They've got the same energy and the same sense of humour. They're also so connected and love each other so much. They share the love and the passion for motherhood. They're best friends. It's such a charming friendship. It's a beautiful thing. Robin called Blake her best friend in a heartfelt birthday Instagram post in 2022, writing, "You're kind of special to me." She also gave Blake a special personalised cake for the occasion, which Blake shared on her Instagram story. Robin also shared that she and Blake have very strong bonds with each other's kids. "I genuinely feel like her children are mine, as if I gave birth to them, and vice versa. We're like, your children are mine too. Our relationship has only gotten richer and fuller." When Blake Lively walked the red carpet at the world premiere of Reynolds' movie Deadpool and Wolverine, Robin was by her side. Their sisters were also joined by Robin's 3 children. In honour of Lively's 37th birthday, Robin Lively posted a carousel of photos for her sister on Instagram, writing, "That's my B-Day queen right there. I love this girl, my sister, my best friend, my little piggyback buddy. You are one of the best humans I know. Happy birthday, Sissy Britches." Clearly, a very close relationship between these two individuals, notwithstanding the fact there's 15 years of age difference between them. Might it be that this shows two individuals that have considerable emotional empathy for one another, even though there is such an age gap? No fallings out between the two of them, on the contrary, a very close and mutually praising relationship. Or might that be indicative of something else? To talk about one another's children almost belonging to one another, might that be demonstrative of some kind of enmeshment that has taken place between the two? And consequently, might it be that this closeness is not generated by emotional empathy? Indeed, might it be argued that the distance in age has meant that they couldn't really know one another and it's more performative? Or, on the contrary, are we dealing with two very close sisters, which demonstrates again the strength of familial relations? So far, we have found that she seems to have a good relationship with her mother, had a good relationship with her father, that there's a good relationship with Laurie, that there doesn't appear to be any problems with the relationship with Jason, and a particularly close relationship with Robin. All of this points to perhaps an individual who is not problematic within the familial environment, or is it simply a family that closes ranks to the outside world and protects one another irrespective of what has gone on between them? Finally, there's Eric Lively. He was born in 1981. He began an acting career, and he starred in shows such as A Minute with Stan Hooper, The L Word, Modern Men, A Medea Christmas, and BFFs. He's been married to his wife since 2005. As mentioned previously, Eric has influenced Blake Lively with regard to her career. They travelled around Europe together, and he often quizzed her on what she wanted to do in the future. Because of my interests, he decided that I should be a film producer. She ended up explaining to Interview magazine on one occasion. And she said, "I didn't want to be an actor because my whole family did it. Going into the family business was the last thing I wanted to do." But her brother convinced her to go to an audition, which turned into several, and after that, she then got the part in the Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants, albeit thanks to her father. Accordingly, that gives us further insight into the relationship with Eric, where it's a supportive one, albeit possibly one where she's been subjected to not having a lot of choice about what she wanted to do. And again, it's been dictated to her. But certainly, It's not a fractious one. There's no evidence of falling out with him either. The examination of the relationships that she has with her parents and all of her siblings do not show any problems, at least no reported problems, which either means that there aren't any and that they have good relationships, or that where there have been difficulties, they're kept within the family and they have not been provided for public consumption. I've explained some of the views that her siblings have stated about her, which have been favourable, particularly in relation to Laurie and especially Robin. But what does Blake Lively have to say about her family? She stated, "I have a big, close, loving family, and they're all from the South. But because so many of them are actors, everyone was very normal about it. It was just like any job to them. They always came home and talked about it around the dinner table, the way that any family talks about work, but it wasn't anything special." She also spoke about how important her family is to her, including her siblings' children. "My parents, my siblings, my daughter, my husband, my nieces and nephews, that's where I get very mama bear." There are two ways to look at it. You could look at it as, that's what I'm vulnerable about, but also that's the thing that excites me in the world. Whilst she wasn't convinced initially that she wanted to be in front of the camera, she did enjoy the perks of having sisters and brothers who were in the business. "I got to travel and visit my family on set. I got to eat craft service," she said. "I actually think that was the reason I got into acting, free food. I literally remember on my first job being like, yes, I get to have craft service every day." Fact is that she's spoken favourably about her family, about her sisters, that she has utilised social media to talk about them in favourable terms, about the death of her father, and that there isn't any evidence of her bad-mouthing family or falling out with them. What about the position in relation to extended family? That's worth visiting. I mentioned in the analysis that took place concerning Ryan Reynolds that it would appear that Tammy Reynolds, his mother, and Blake Lively got along fairly well. But this is the first time that there appears to be a degree of friction. Apparently, when they were in the beginning of their whirlwind romance, see what I explained in relation to Reynolds, and I'll be naturally revisiting that in the context of ascertaining what Blake Lively is, they had a visit to his hometown of Vancouver, and there was a showdown between Blake Lively and Tammy Reynolds, which caused a furious Blake Lively to storm off. Apparently, Tammy Reynolds, as a straight talker and someone who speaks her mind, hadn't warmed to Blake Lively. It was reported that Tammy Reynolds would like to have seen her son with a woman who's not in the movie business, because she feels that ultimately actresses put their careers first. She took the view that Blake was pressurising Ryan Reynolds into settling down before he's ready. He also rushed into his first marriage with Scarlett Johansson. At the time, Reynolds and Blake Lively were unofficially engaged, and at the time of this report were planning to wed in the summer of 2013. But Tammy Reynolds was urging them to relocate to Vancouver full-time. She said that when they have kids, they should raise them in Canada because it's safer. Blake refuses to even consider that, saying that she has to be in New York City for work. Despite the objections to the hasty wedding, Tammy Reynolds had also been trying to take over the wedding planning, says the source. She wanted to invite all these family friends that Blake Lively doesn't know. It came to a head during a dinner at the Reynolds family home. Tammy Reynolds started grilling Blake Lively, and Blake Lively left the room and had a meltdown. She told Reynolds that she wanted to stay at a hotel for the rest of the trip. Lively cooled down enough to dine with Reynolds, his brother and sister-in-law, the next day, but made it clear that his mother was not welcome. Tensions remained high. Tammy Reynolds said at the time it proved that she was right, that Blake is a diva. Might this be seen as a situation of an interfering mother-in-law, and Lively has reacted quite properly to interference in her wedding planning? Might it be that it's just a concerned mother who saw something in Blake Lively that she didn't like, and Lively reacted badly to this? But it's the first instance of where some tension has been described in relation to the familial relations of Blake Lively. What can we take away from all of this? Well, it is not the case that we've got an individual who habitually falls out with family, badmouths them, is known for estrangements and being difficult. On the contrary, the picture is painted of a close-knit family, a loving one. But could that just be a form of facade management? Could it be the closing of ranks? Could it be, in actual fact, that the family is a little bit weird? After all, they are involved in the acting profession, which is notably one where stronger narcissistic traits are favourable, and it might be that they are also lovey-dovey with one another, but over the top and gushing and so forth, but that's indicative of poor boundary recognition and strong narcissistic traits. Things to consider, and as ever, to keep them in mind and in context as we examine each aspect of Blake Lively's life. We're going to move on to other aspects of her world in the continued examination of Blake Lively. Join me in part 3.